My name is David Ben Ephraim, and I am a merchant from Jerusalem. For 35 years, I've sold grain and oil in the markets near the temple. I knew every corner of the city, every face in the crowd, every rumor that spread to the streets like wildfire. I was a practical man. Religion was good for business. The pilgrims needed food. The priests needed supplies. I attended synagogue, paid my taxes, and kept my head down. Life was predictable, profitable, and peaceful until that Nazarene came to town. Jesus of Nazareth had been causing quite a stir throughout Judea. Some called him a prophet, others a madman. The religious leaders whispered that he was dangerous, a blasphemer who claimed to be the Son of God. To me, he was just another preacher who would eventually fade away. I was wrong about so many things. The week before Passover, the entire city was buzzing with excitement and tension. Jesus had entered Jerusalem riding on a donkey, and the crowds had welcomed him like a king. Palm branches, shouts of Hosanna. It was like nothing I'd ever seen. But the mood among the religious elite was dark. The Pharisees and Sadducees were livid. How dare this carpenter's son accept such worship? How dare he claim authority over the temple? In my shop, I heard the whispers. The chief priests were planning something. They wanted Jesus silenced, permanently. He's a threat to everything we hold sacred, said Rabbi Caiaphas to a group gathered near my stall. The Romans are watching. If this continues, they'll destroy our nation. I nodded along. It made sense. We couldn't afford to anger Rome. We had families to feed, businesses to run. One man's delusions weren't worth risking everything. Thursday night, I was closing my shop when I saw the torches moving through the streets. A large group of temple guards, Roman soldiers, and armed men were marching toward the Mount of Olives. Curiosity got the better of me. I followed at a distance. In the Garden of Gethsemane, they found him. Jesus was praying, his disciples sleeping nearby. When they came to arrest him, one of his followers drew a sword and cut off a guard's ear. But Jesus, he touched the man's ear and healed it instantly, right there in front of everyone. I felt a chill run down my spine. What kind of man heals his enemy in the moment of his own betrayal? The disciples fled like cowards. Jesus went quietly with his captors, like a lamb led to slaughter. By morning, the news had spread throughout Jerusalem. Jesus was on trial before the Sanhedrin. I made my way to the temple courts, drawn by morbid curiosity. The trial was a sham. Witnesses contradicted each other. Evidence was fabricated, and the verdict was predetermined. But when the high priest asked Jesus directly, "Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed One?" Jesus answered simply, "I am." The crowd gasped. The high priest tore his robes. "Blasphemy," he cried. "What further need do we have of witnesses?" They spat on him. They blindfolded him and struck him, mocking, "Prophesy! Who hit you?" I watched it all and felt nothing. This man had brought it on himself. He could have denied the charges, could have saved his life. Instead, he chose his path. Or so I thought. The religious leaders couldn't execute Jesus themselves. Roman law required the governor's approval, so they dragged him before Pontius Pilate. I followed the crowd to the praetorium. By now, hundreds of people had gathered. The air was thick with tension and bloodlust. Pilate seemed reluctant. He questioned Jesus privately, then announced to the crowd, "I find no fault in this man." But the chief priests had worked the crowd into a frenzy. "He claims to be a king," they shouted. "He opposes Caesar." When Pilate offered to release either Jesus or Barabbas, a known murderer and rebel, the crowd screamed for Barabbas. "Then what shall I do with Jesus?" Pilate asked, and that's when I heard my own voice, joining the terrible chorus that still haunts my dreams. "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Why did I shout those words? Even now, years later, I struggle to understand. Was it peer pressure? The crowd's energy was intoxicating, dangerous. When everyone around you is shouting, you shout too. Was it fear? The religious leaders made it clear. Anyone who supported Jesus was an enemy of Israel. Was it anger? This man had disrupted our peaceful existence, threatened our way of life. Maybe it was all of these things. Or maybe it was something darker, the human capacity for evil that we don't want to acknowledge. As the words left my mouth, I saw Jesus look in my direction, not at me specifically. There were hundreds of us, but in that moment, I felt as though he saw straight into my soul. There was no anger in his eyes, no hatred, only sadness and love. How could he look at us, his accusers, his executioners, with love? Pilate washed his hands, literally and figuratively. "I am innocent of this man's blood," he declared. The crowd, myself included, shouted back, "His blood be on us and on our children." Another words I would come to regret for the rest of my life. Jesus was scourged, beaten until his back was raw flesh. They placed a crown of thorns on his head and mocked him as a king. Then they forced him to carry his own cross through the streets of Jerusalem. I followed the procession, still caught up in the mob mentality. We jeered, we laughed, we celebrated this victory over the blasphemer. But something strange was happening inside me. Each time Jesus stumbled under the weight of the cross, each time he felt his knees, I felt a growing unease. This wasn't justice. This was cruelty. At Golgotha, they nailed him to the cross. I had never witnessed a crucifixion before. The sounds, the sight, it was horrible beyond description. But what struck me most was his behavior. Even in agony, even dying, Jesus wasn't cursing his executioners or calling down judgment on his enemies. Instead, he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Forgive them. Forgive us. Forgive me. I stood there, part of the crowd that had demanded his death, and he was asking God to forgive us. The soldiers gambled for his clothes. The religious leaders mocked him. He saved others. He cannot save himself. One thief crucified beside him hurled insults, but the other thief rebuked him. "We are receiving the due reward of our deeds, but this man has done nothing wrong." Then he turned to Jesus. "Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Jesus replied, "Today you will be with me in paradise." Even dying, he was offering hope to a criminal. At the 6th hour, darkness fell over the whole land. It wasn't natural. The sun was blotted out for 3 hours. The crowd grew quiet, uneasy. This wasn't normal. This wasn't right. At the 9th hour, Jesus cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" The raw anguish in his voice broke something inside me. This wasn't just a man dying. This was something cosmic, something beyond my understanding. Then Jesus said, "It is finished." He bowed his head and gave up his spirit. At that moment, the earth shook, the rock split. The veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The Roman centurion who had supervised the execution fell to his knees and declared, "Truly this was the Son of God." And suddenly I understood. The terrible, wonderful, devastating truth hit me like a physical blow. We had just killed the Son of God. 30 years have passed since that terrible and wonderful day at Golgotha. I am now an old man, my beard white as snow, my hands gnarled with age. But my heart burns as brightly as ever with love for the one I once condemned. My children have children now, and they gather around my chair in the evenings to hear the story again. "Tell us about the day you met Jesus, grandfather." They plead, and I tell them not just about crucifixion, but about the resurrection, about Peter's forgiveness, about the community of believers that became our family. Yesterday, my youngest grandson, barely 5 years old, climbed onto my lap and asked, "Grandfather, why did you shout those bad words at Jesus?" I looked into his innocent eyes and said, "Because I didn't understand who he was, little one. I was afraid, and I let that fear make me cruel. But Jesus forgave me, and he used even my terrible mistake for something good." "How?" he asked. "Because now I can tell people that no matter what they've done, no matter how far they've fallen, Jesus can forgive them too. If he can forgive someone who called for his death, he can forgive anyone." As I write these words, I can hear the persecution growing throughout the Roman Empire. Christians are being thrown to lions, burned as torches, crucified on crosses like our Lord. Some of my own spiritual children have already given their lives for the faith. But I am not afraid. I know that the man I helped to kill defeated death itself. I know that the kingdom he proclaimed is not of this world, and no earthly power can destroy it. My name is David Ben Ephraim. I was in the crowd that demanded Jesus' death. But by his grace, I became a witness to his life, his death, his resurrection, and his transforming power. If you are reading this and you carry guilt for something you've done, if you feel like you're beyond forgiveness, beyond redemption, remember my story. Remember that Jesus looked down from the cross at those who were killing him and said, "Father, forgive them." He was talking about you. He was talking about me. He was talking about all of us. There is no sin too great for his grace. No person too far gone for his love. No heart too hard for his mercy to break and remake. I was in the crowd that shouted, "Crucify him." But Jesus made me his own.